This is the MeatEater podcast coming at you shirtless, severely bug-bitten, and in my case, underwearless.
We hunt the MeatEater podcast.
You can't predict anything.
The MeatEater podcast is brought to you by First Light. Whether you're checking trail cams, hanging deer stands, or scouting for elk, First Light has performance apparel to support every hunter in every environment. Check it out at firstlight.com. FIRSTLITE.com. Welcome to the show. Today, Corinne is, among other things, well, no, she's only doing one thing. Among other things that will happen on today's show is Corinne, you will be able to listen to Corinne, unless you're on YouTube, then you can watch it happen. Does she got a camera at her, Phil?
Yeah.
You'll be able to listen to and or camera. Watch Corinne flesh her first coyote. Woo. Huge applause.
Is that like a homemade ulu there?
This is a homemade ulu. I did not make this. I'll tell you about it in a minute.
All right.
You need to take Corinne, did you grow up calling them coyotes?
Wiley.
Okay. Now that you've got one, you'll switch. I found that people that say coyote have likely gotten one, and people that say coyote haven't.
I say coyote. Does that track?
That track.
I code switch.
There's a number of tools here that she's gonna be doing. I'm reluctant to let her use this. This is a Dexter. This is an ensemble draw knife or fleshing knife. People, you might call it a necker knife. This is a good way for you to put a hole in that.
Right, which I don't want.
But I'm gonna let you use the back side.
Okay.
So this is your cutting edge. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is your pushing edge. Yeah. Okay. You're allowed to use the pushing edge because the cutting edge you'll have to spend more time figuring out on.
Yeah. And for listeners, it's a 16-inch blade with
a draw knife
handles at both sides.
You better get yourself
for listeners who don't know what a draw knife is.
You better get yourself a new mental tape measure.
Kind of looks like a machete with a handle on both ends.
No, it don't.
Boomerang.
It's like a ninja sword.
Yeah,
it's a ninja sword.
A katana.
If you cut it in half and put a handle on the other end of the blade.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Katana? Is that what they call them?
Oh, that's the traditional. Yeah,
that curved blade.
Yeah. You know what I highly recommend for parents? Speaking of ninja swords, is
nunchucks.
No, man. We have more fun
throwing stars.
We buy ninja throwing stars. You can't buy them on Amazon. You have to go to ninja supply houses. But we go to online ninja supply houses and buy ninja throwing stars. There is nothing more fun.
Did you ever make them out of sheet metal and shop class back in the day?
Yeah. We never could make anything that was as good as what you could buy.
Still fun.
But they got the kid safe ones at Costco now. The throwing stars.
No,
Wait, sorry.
What, are they made out of Velcro or something?
I couldn't tell you what they're made out of. But little plastic things that stick in.
No.
If it's kid safe, it's not a throwing star.
I'm talking 8.
It's in the shape of a star.
We like 7 and 8 point.
Yeah,
a 4-star ninja throwing star, a 4-point ninja throwing star means that half the time it don't do anything. You get an 8-point ninja throwing star, that son of a bitch is gonna stick.
You got a big block of wood, big round of wood out in your yard.
We took a big slab of cottonwood and I hung it from chains. So like a swing set has those angled the supports, like saw leg style things. I put a S or an eye bolt up on that on the sawhorse legs of the swing set. I put an eye bolt so I could suspend a cottonwood stump. They dry out and fall apart, but you put that cottonwood stump up, and then next very important step. Oh, that is such horse shit.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Come on.
Kid safe.
It's like a Nerf bow.
Yeah, so, no. The next step that's very important is you take all these throwing stars you just purchased and you spray paint them blaze orange.
I was just going to ask if you had any get sucked up into your lawnmower.
One is like MIA, and it's blaze orange.
Oh. You don't like put up a carpet backstop or something?
No, I paint them blaze orange. One, I'll never understand what happened to it. We've taken the metal detector, we can't find it. Blaze orange ninja throwing star missing.
Do they practice from different positions? Like kneeling?
No, I've showed them. We do it like you hold it, like you're pinching it between your thumb and the main knuckle on your forefinger. And I was telling them that in ninja movies, I don't really know what the move is, but they kind of got like a
They do
they kind of got like it's like they're doing I don't know. They got their fingers out,
Spider-Man style.
It's like this. It's like
they're like palming it almost, and then they.
Is that what they're doing?
Yeah.
That shit.
I don't know how it works.
That's cool.
Oh, they're palming it.
Yeah, and then it's sort of like a frisbee move, I think.
like a discus.
Yeah.
Huh.
Or there's between the fingers, but I think that's more for style than substance.
Yeah, I remember there was a ninja movie, and when they were training, they had that string with a weight on the end, and you'd have to pin that string, man. But the problem is, you're never going to kill anybody with a ninja throwing star. And this is coming from a guy that owns something.
the old movies.
just
Like a
figure
dude
them.
would get hit and he'd just fall over dead.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
right in the chest.
What would really happen if you hit someone with a ninja throwing star? They're going to go, "Ow, Jesus!" That's probably what you're. That's probably.
Yeah. I've got a 1-inch cut.
I love them. What else? The other tool we have here is Tyler Friel, who's been on the show before, made this Ulu knife. You know, it's cool as shit. So I'm holding up a Ulu knife right now that he made. He set it in antler, single bevel. Man, we this project I'm working on that I haven't been able to talk about what it is. We actually filmed with Met and Aaron from the Kent State Archaeological Experiment Lab, and he made an Ulu with an obsidian blade.
Sweet.
Wow.
And you see that and hold that in your hand, and you immediately understand the evolution of the Ulu knife.
Does it have a handle or it's just a chunk of rock?
No, it's
The
got
one-
the same handle, and bedded into it is a big obsidian blade. And you're like, oh, that's where Ulus came from. 100%, man. Corinne might be using this Ulu. I don't know. I don't know what she's. I don't know what.
There's like meat over here. Do I mind
You're
cutting
not going to get
off?
that off.
What if I?
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Like for tan.
Don't take that off. Don't take
Okay.
that off. Okay,
Okay.
Let me explain. Let me explain where we're at on this coyote fleshing project. Stu Miller, the fur handler and trapper, Stu Miller. I fleshed some coyotes with Stu Miller. Stu Miller traps in Southern Illinois. He fleshes his coyotes down clean, down to the leather. I was curious about how, like, because I hear different ways. And like Mercer Lawing would not flesh them all the way down. I asked Mercer, I said, how clean does when you send it into a tannery, not for the fur trade, but you do it the same way. So this is fur trade or not.
Okay.
Well, as we're talking, can they see that coyote that's on that board?
Yeah.
All right, that coyote on the board, for instance, that's prepared in a way that it would be suitable for the fur trade, or it would go to a tannery, just like that, off the board. And I asked Mercer, I'm like, hey, if you're sending the coyote to the tannery, how clean do you flesh it? And he had the brilliant idea he said, why don't you call the tannery? Never would have occurred to me. I called the tannery. I said, how do you like coyotes? They said, excess fat, excess muscle.
Okay.
And did they give you
I knew what they meant.
Well, what do they mean?
What I'm having her do
No,
right
I'm
now.
saying, like, why do they prefer them that way?
So you don't overdo it.
I think that you're taking it all off, and now they have these wheels, these kind of like they have these wheels that they can thin the leather with anyways if
Right.
they need to.
But there's got to be other critters where you're trying to get.
There's a lot of stuff that's clean. A raccoon
Yeah.
is clean.
Right.
Yeah. Like a muskrat, you leave the saddle. Like right now, Corinne's on the saddle. Pinch that little thing there.
It feels like it's not doing anything.
That's like a saddle. Just
This-
cut the
this part-
take this flat tail. The final tool, an MKC flat tail, made by a man who sat right where Brody's sitting one time. Take the flat tail
Just
and cut
meat.
that way like you're cutting the diaphragm out of a deer when you're gutting it. That's kind of a weird way you're doing that.
Do you want me to like
No, you're
peel
fine.
it off or just?
No, you
cut
got it.
this?
You got it. That's the saddle. On a muskrat, you leave the saddle on. On a mink, you leave the saddle on. On a red fox, you leave the saddle on. On a raccoon, the saddle comes off. Beaver, clean. Nothing gets left on.
Right.
You know.
So, like,
And a
can you
coyote, I think they used to do them clean, but they told me don't do it clean. So that little membrane there, but you see down when she gets down by the teats,
Yeah.
that's a female, right? Oh, she just put a damn hole in it.
No, I didn't.
not yet. Not yet.
Okay. Damn it.
Excess fat and excess
Yeah,
meat,
okay,
Corinne.
so then
Cameras
I don't
are rolling.
really-
Yeah,
Perfect.
this is the worst case scenario for someone doing this to a coyote for the first time.
How so?
Good
A
animal.
lot of
practice.
pressure.
Oh,
You got
this
you
is
at the
just-
table and 3 cameras pointing at her.
The MeatEater Cyber Monday sale. This is your last chance. This is your last chance to take advantage of the Cyber Monday sale. First Light FHF gear, Phelps game calls, Dave Smith decoys, and the MeatEater store. Okay, it shuts off at 11:59 p.m. What time zone? Like if you're gonna get that
Probably-
specific, it probably
Probably
rolls.
east.
It probably rolls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hey, Corinne, you've got no mic, so you got to use your outside voice whenever you say it.
I think it would
Okay.
Thank you.
depend
rolls.
on your IP address. Yeah.
Mountain time.
11:59 tonight. Don't be trying to shop at midnight. Too late. 50% off until 11:59 tonight. I challenge someone to try and make a purchase at 11:59 in 30 seconds. Too late.
And by tonight, we mean December 2nd.
Is that what this is?
Correct. Monday to December 2nd.
Monday, December 2nd.
11:59 Mountain Time.
Up to 50% off. First Light gear. So
it is
like
Mountain
Thanks, Cory.
Time.
Yep. First Light gear, FHF gear. Phelps game calls, Dave Smith decoys. Go to firstlight.com and do all your shopping there. Have we covered our tools? Yeah, we got the Ulu
Yep.
knife, we got the flat tail.
What's that black handled thing there? No. Yeah.
Oh, little honer.
I got you.
Little honer. So there's that. A lot of feedback. This is one of those things that continues. Oh, I was going to say something else. What the hell was I going to talk about? What was I just talking about?
Kids podcast?
No.
Trapping or fur stuff?
Don't shop at 11:59.
Don't shop at 11:59. No.
Don't get them wet. Don't feed them after midnight.
Don't take too much stuff off the coyote, the saddle.
Effed up shitters calendars.
No.
Corey's
It's a
good
great calendar.
Corey's a good company man here.
It's a great calendar. The other day I was talking about an ad I dreamt up about the calendar with Santa Claus in it.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to walk that one up the ladder if you're cool with that.
No, I think it's a phenomenal
a great
idea. If
idea.
we need Randall needs to play Santa.
Santa's
I would
right
love
here.
to.
Yeah, perfect.
I would love to.
Consider it done.
On a recent episode, we got a lot, the feedback keeps coming. I remember there was there's been other subjects in the history of the show where it just kind of kept going. You cover something and then there's feedback and you cover the feedback and then the feedback gets feedback
Sometimes for years.
and it
It's a feedback
reverberates. It becomes what might be called a feedback loop of feedback. And it never ends. And then I'll say this is it, and then a while later we'll cover it more. And eventually it'll die.
So here we go again.
On the show, we covered pre-chewing food for your children. In particular, that when our kids, we have 3 of them, when our kids would get to be 9 months old, I would chew up deer meat, and then I'd give them the chewed up deer meat, and they would eat that, and I would say, "Ha! His first thing ever was that deer meat," or something to that effect. And we were talking about pre-chewed deer meat, and we had follow-up from Pat Durkin, talking about eating pre-chewed meat. Our kids all ate pre-chewed meat. And we had some feedback, including feedback from a DDS. What does that mean, Dr. Randall?
It's a dentist.
Yeah, but what does it actually stand
Doctor
for?
of Dental
Surgery.
something or other.
Science? Oh, do you know dentists all kind of stick together in a weird little way?
Well, I mean, does that surprise you?
Doctor of dental surgery.
Do you guys remember when we had it? My dentist came on the show?
Yeah,
I
great
wasn't
guy.
here that day.
Goat killer.
Yeah. Yeah. Mountain
Or
goat
maybe
killer.
I was here.
I have the only dentist in America who's killed 10 mountain goats.
He's killed
Well,
10?
Well, because he grew up in Southeast Alaska. They'd get off school and go goat hunting.
It's like hunting
Like
the
this-
back 40 for
Yeah, like how
goats.
you might go like hunt for an evening for whitetails. When he was growing up, he'd go hunt goats after school. Only dentist in America like that. He came on the podcast. I can't remember if he won. He did really
win.
well.
Yeah, he won.
Yeah.
I believe he won in
gosh.
overtime, actually.
And he just fixed my daughter's hockey helmet.
Really?
It's like he's trying to one up me.
Who
Did he fix another man's daughter's hockey helmet?
Did he have to use a particular dental instrument to do that, or is he just a helmet guy?
He texted me and let me know he fixed my daughter's hockey helmet.
Steve in sports,
Yeah.
So.
And he's also a doctor, and then we know how Steve feels about that.
Yeah, so he's all built up now. He thinks he's the man.
Yep.
He's a doc. He's a dentist. He fixed my daughter's hockey helmet. Keep your hands off my daughter's hockey helmet.
Did he first say something was wrong with the helmet? Like, hey, let me see that helmet. Something's wrong with it.
We've been aware of a slight problem with her helmet for a year.
Okay.
Missing a screw that holds the face mask on. I always think I'm going to replace that screw. And then once he tried to one-up me, I did. I went in and replaced it last night. And I asked him if he wanted his screw back, and he texted me that he did not. To which I followed up, you guys want to come for dinner on Monday? And he said he does.
Great.
I think he was saving you money.
Then you guys can have your little argument about
Then I'm going to take him aside, and I'm going to be like, what's with you trying to fix my daughter's hockey helmet?
You make a nicer dinner than he made the last time.
Because if she gets into an accident, her jaw is coming off her face. So he can see that.
That was graphic.
I guess that's true.
You could see that he wouldn't fix it, hoping that something bad would happen to her
Hockey players are known to have problems with their teeth.
It's like a collision repair guy, saying, hey, you ought to replace those tires. If he was unscrupulous, he'd just leave it alone. But
God, now I'm starting to like the guy all over again. I liked him before I got all wound up on this subject. Now I'm back to liking him.
Yep. Tighten your lug nuts.
So, the hell was I saying? Oh, how they stick together. So he came on the podcast, and we just point out he's a dentist. He's on the podcast. Well, guess what? Other dentists contact him to offer him hunting permissions.
Oh,
it's like a little dentist
hunting club.
If
like
there
a little
any
club.
I've not heard from a history PhD offering me anything of value.
He got hunting. Yeah, he got hunting invites. He got hunting invites off it for being a dentist.
That's pretty solid.
Because you know what? They're like, you know what, buddy? I understand. All we do is make children cry. Why don't you come out and hunt my place?
Yeah.
They've
been through it together.
Anyways, a guy wrote in, a DDS, a dentist wrote in, giving his 2 cents on pre-chewed food. And he was pointing out, which seemed to me to be totally reasonable. He was pointing out that the quicker you can get a little kid chewing chewy foods, not super processed, ultra processed foods, which are all, if you think about it, ultra processed foods are all soft. Chewing real whole foods, that's a two-handed draw knife.
I just don't want. I'm being so delicate here.
Pre-chewed foods.
Pre-chewed. He was saying that a child needs to have resistance training in his jaw, the same way that you get other exercise muscles. So he said the quicker you get your child resistance training his jaw, he'll get a beefy, good jaw. And as people switch to those little tubes that you squeeze your food out of, which their consumption has gone up 800%, we were pointing out.
From nothing.
But Brody pointed out, anything that gets invented sees an explosion in growth because it wasn't there before.
Yeah. Like cell phones.
Yeah. There's been a
skyrocketed since the 1950s.
Yeah, and when they came out with those shoes that have 5 toes on them, usage skyrocketed.
Yeah.
800%.
Among other things.
So he had that to say. Now, another guy wrote in, and he's trying to, he says this. I'm just going to let him speak for himself. In episode 620, this is from a gentleman named Matthew. Matthew says, "Hi, MeatEater. In episode 620, a Max Care, that was the DDS's name, letter was referenced in the discussion regarding pre-chewed food. As Matt flaunted his DDS, I feel obligated to mention that I am an exercise physiologist and nutritionist."
I wonder if they stick together.
Do they get PhDs? What does that mean? How quickly could I get one of those?
I don't know how you credential that.
Can you look it up? Could I have one by the end of the day?
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
I'm guessing it's probably a master's degree.
Well, that's what he is. He's an exercise physiologist and nutritionist. He goes on. He is very unhappy with what this guy said. He goes on. The idea that a baby needs resistance training for the jaw for appropriate mandibular development is like saying they need to do push-ups so they can crawl on time. For nearly all healthy infants, this is continuing the letter. For nearly all healthy infants, their rate of development all gets washed out by the time they are 2. It's just silly fear-mongering that folks use to support their ideology and sell whatever they are selling. Probably the most flawed of these is the statement that breastfeeding is superior to formula. Getting into controversial area now.
I have a feeling this feedback.
I've heard that breastfed babies are more snuggly. I don't know if that's
Oh.
true. He goes on. Probably the most flawed of these is the statement that breastfeeding is superior to formula. Funny how he neglects to mention the millions of lives saved by the advent of formula. These correlations are drawn from the predominance of poor nutrient profile in most commercial formulas. They are not causal in any way. For example, if a mother is breastfeeding, but she is an alcoholic, is that going to better support development than a mother who canned breastfeed and is using a whole fat, high quality formula? Of course not. I a little bit take
That's a little.
It's a little because let me give you an example. Let's say I said I'm not feeding my baby at all, and they're like, "Well, that's terrible." And I said, "Well, or I'll feed it mercury."
Right.
What's better now? Do you know what I'm saying?
I can honestly say that's the first time the image of someone feeding an infant mercury has ever crossed my mind.
Now, if they're bottle feeding them,
do you know what I'm saying? He's going to way out there.
I take his point though that if most formulas are poor in nutrition, there's a point to be made there, but it doesn't mean that formula by default is.
So yes, is it okay? Is it better? I agree. Who could argue this? That he's saying this. What's better? A whole fat, high quality formula, or mother's milk from a drunken alcoholic?
let me think about that one. But we're talking about the whole thing. We're talking. Come on,
ergo.
I think he's being a little harsh on our guy Max. We're talking about if you exercise a muscle, it's going to get stronger, right? Come on.
I like this guy.
And Max sent us a nice card. Corinne, where's that card?
Yeah,
is that from him?
It's open up my laptop. It's right on the inside of that.
Oh, I know what I was going to talk about now.
Underneath it, yep.
I shouldn't talk about. No, I shouldn't do. I want to set it up that way. What's this?
Oh, that's a card from Max.
Oh.
With a message to each of us.
I almost threw it on that random ear on the table.
Matthew, this guy does say is mostly joking, so we should.
Well, I like him. I think, but I just remember what I was going to talk about. It's something I shouldn't talk about because it's going to get me in trouble with my wife, my kid, and my kid's school.
How much trouble?
Minor.
Go for it.
My kid, I just had to go to the parents' meeting for speech and debate. Okay. And I'm down there and I'm sitting with my wife.
Debating with her?
No. Oh, I did.
I was going to say, this is
I sat through the whole parents' meeting and I said to her afterward, the second the guy was done talking, we're still sitting there, and I said, I have one of those things for you that you're going to be annoyed that I said. You're not going to take it seriously, and you're never going to give it its due. And this intrigued her to want to know what exactly it was. And it was this. I'm like, I don't like any part of this whole thing. Why would you want to train without knowing these kids, all these kids in high school? They're even talking about parents donating money to support speech and debate. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I got to hear more about why you don't like it.
Well, I'm going to get
It's like
there.
teaching your kids martial arts.
No, I'm getting there.
They're going to use it
As
against
someone
you.
who
It occurred to me midway through this whole thing. I don't know their ethics and ideology. Why would I want to spend money training them and being convincing when I don't know what they're going to try to convince people of?
Mm-hmm.
I would spend it in infusing them with my ethics and ideology. And then of those who adopted that,
teach them.
I would then teach them to be convincing. But how could I just come into a room of high school kids and want them all to be convincing when I don't know? And I came up with a slogan: today's kids are tomorrow's enemies.
That's a good one.
And it's like
that's one of your best.
It just occurred to me, and my wife, in fact, did not give it its due. She still hasn't given me what she thinks about the whole.
Well, I think the idea is that it's like they're teaching them, they're giving them a template that they can slot in ideology as they get older and form their own opinions.
But how do we
teaching
know?
Them certain
how do
routes
we
to go
know
down.
that we don't take a kid and make him super good at being convincing,
and then
he goes out and convinces people to do horrible stuff?
Becomes an anti-hunting, like
yes,
Oh,
and people would be like, "My God, how did he get so good at convincing everybody of that?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I donated $20 to his speech and debate program. Perhaps I'm to blame."
I thought this was going to be one of those scenarios where, like, the ex-pro basketball player is watching his son get coached by a guy who never played pro basketball, and he steps in. He goes, That's not how you do that.
That's got to happen. No, it really shook me up.
Can I interrupt for a second? How good are we?
Spin
I
it.
don't feel like
You're
we
looking
need to
very
do
good.
more.
Spin it. Spin it.
There
Okay,
you
we
go.
got to sew
One
that hole
Yep.
with what's called a baseball stitch.
Corey, can you pull that other mic towards you so we can see the? No, pull
No.
it. There you go.
You're
Just a
100%. You're 100%
clean
there.
view.
Now you'll see that there's a set nail on the bottom of that stretching board, Corinne, behind you.
Oh.
A double-headed nail on the bottom.
They're over here. There are two of these.
No, the bottom of that stretching board.
Okay.
You're pointing to a fleshing beam.
The one against the
So turn
wall.
your attention to the fleshing to the stretcher,
Yeah. So there are two.
and you'll see at the bottom of it there is a
yeah.
double-headed nail.
Okay.
Pull that double-headed nail out. That will collapse, and you can pull that coyote off that board. Make sure there's no thumbtack in it anywhere.
How easy does it come out?
Anyways, he says, so kindly inform Max Care DDS. This is the part I like the most. We're back to this. So kindly inform Max Care DDS that my formula drinking, pre-chewed deer meat eating baby would whoop his baby any day of the week. That would be a great show if we had babies come and fight on this table.
I think we could charge a pretty penny for.
Tomorrow's enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where he adds the mostly joking at the end of that.
Yeah. Good. You raise good points, but you raise good points. Thank you, Matthew. Who wants to set the we're going to move our attention over to Virginia. Well, it's kind of a letter that someone wrote in, so we'll just we'll tackle this whole thing. My good friend Bubbly Doug Duran, who I adore, he's got some gripes. He's got some landowner gripage about this next subject. We're talking about deer hunting with hounds.
like personal experience gripage, or he just generally it makes him uncomfortable.
Well, no, I got to explain a thing
All right.
because I'm a little ahead of myself. We're going to move our attention to deer hunting with hounds in Virginia, the debate around that. Now, in the South, you can do that. Just generally, like there's a culture of hound hunting for deer in the South, and there's not a culture of hound hunting for deer in the North. In the North, it's illegal, and there's a handful of Southern states. No. You remember a podcast episode we had that was called "Skip the Flip"?
Oh.
We're not skipping the flip.
For those listeners at home, he's referring to Corinne on
Yeah.
the
Let's
stretching
get
board.
back to this hound thing.
Back?
You got to put them on inside out,
Oh.
and then you
shoot.
dry them overnight inside
Oh,
out,
I got
and
it.
then you
Okay.
flip it, or else it'll dry to the board.
Right. Skip the flip.
So skip the flip,
Skip the
because
flip.
Mercer Lawing lives in the Mojave Desert, and he was pointing out that where he lives is so dry that he doesn't need to do the 2-part dry. He skips the flip
Okay.
and just puts it on hair side out.
Right.
but you need to
now
dry
we're
the
making it
outside
this
and
way.
then flip it so that it doesn't stick to the board and get rotten.
Yep, got it.
So it'll flip in the morning.
Okay. All right. Nose.
Yep, you're getting
And
there.
how much do we pull it? I like the nose. I don't want to stretch the nose.
No, don't stretch. Just snug it up.
Stretch, it'll get
Snug
bigger.
it up on there.
Okay.
You'll get more nose.
Yeah. And then go ahead and pin those ears up so it looks like that one for now. Just pin them up. Yep.
Like that way.
Yep. Just give them a light. Don't lay it. Kind of roll it. Don't-
Roll,
yeah.
Like,
So yeah, not tight. You don't want to make a lot of surface connection there. Just a light little pinning.
I got the board.
Hound hunting for deer, and I know that like Doug has where Doug lives is popular to run coyotes with dogs. And Doug. I hate to I'm not putting words in his mouth.
We'll find out if you're.
Well, Doug has brought up the difficulty of in his area the near impossibility of preventing your dogs from hunting other people's property.
because you're talking about small farms, right?
Yeah, it's like you got an area of small dairy farms, and you turn them out on a coyote. The coyote goes wherever he wants. The dogs are going wherever the coyote went, and you can't really even kind of suggest that you have any control over your dogs being in other people's places. So you're sitting there deer hunting, and all of a sudden, here comes everybody's pack of dogs. And he says it causes a lot of consternation in his area.
There's no rule against letting your dog run on other people's ground.
I don't know. Is that true?
No, I'm asking. Like, I would assume it's legal for it. Like, you're not doing anything wrong if your dog runs a coyote across 3 or 4 different properties.
Well, I know this in this state that we're sitting in right now. If a dog attacks your livestock, there's no questions asked. You can kill that dog
Right.
for harassing your livestock. Right. Anyways, so here's a listener feedback. This is from a listener. Right? Yes. Okay. The guy says this. Recently, my state rejected regulations around the use of dogs for deer hunting. The mandated use of GPS collars and making reasonable effort to ensure dogs can't enter property where owners have requested dogs not be run. I'm torn on this issue because I see it as a slippery slope on both sides. Meaning, okay, so he's saying the state considered but ultimately rejected regulations that would have mandated deer hound hunters, mandated that they put the GPS collar on their dog so that they know where the dog is. And then, with using that GPS tracking collar, make effort to keep their dogs off of people's property.
With a lot of those units, you can hit like a callback button that dog will stop doing whatever it's doing and turn around.
He says, I'm torn on this issue because I see it as a slippery slope on both sides. On the one hand, I do not run dogs to hunt deer and have had many deer and turkey hunts in recent years disturbed by a pack of dogs running through the properties I can access. Given the limited weekend time I have to hunt between work responsibilities and small kids, having game run off because of a pack of dogs coming onto a property is frustrating. I can also understand the frustration of property owners who have a pack of dogs run through and disturb their land, their livestock, or the game and habitat on their property. On the other hand, I recognize that hound hunting deer is an important tradition to many people in Virginia. And though I don't run dogs for deer hunting, I have fox hunted with a pack of hounds, a pretty similar practice. I realize that in this way, my stance is somewhat hypocritical. Regulations on hunting fox with dogs in places like England have made my state one of the last. I'm going to edit this a little bit.
Yeah.
He's saying that his state is one of the last refuges of the sporting tradition of hound hunting with dogs. What?
Fox hunting with dogs.
No, it's just like he's just saying it's one of the last places you can use hounds, which is a little.
He's saying regulations on fox hunts in England
have made my state one of the last.
Fox hunting is also.
Oh, I got you. No. He's saying. Here's what he's saying. I think. He's saying like, hey man, in places like England,
Yep.
they've regulated the piss out of hunting with dogs, fox hunting to the point where you basically can't do it. So he's saying, so with England out of the picture, Virginia has become one of the last places for the sporting tradition of hunting fox with hounds. That's what he's saying.
Yep.
And he's saying that being able to hunt foxes with hounds is very effective in helping to manage fox and coyote populations. And he says also, just like deer hunting with dogs is constantly under attack, fox hunting is also constantly under attack in Virginia from the usual suspects in the animal rights community. He goes on. I recognize the near possibility of keeping a large pack of dogs together and off adjoining properties while they are on the hunt. And I realize that hound hunters don't want to give an inch on the deer hunting issue because of the need to guard the gate. Meaning deer hound hunters in Virginia are fighting for the defense of their lifestyle and they're not in the mood to entertain compromises. And he says, which I fully understand and support. I also personally don't believe that the most recent proposed regulations would be all that effective in keeping a pack of dogs off adjoining properties. So that being said, what do you think can be done in cases like this where hunters are adversely affected by the actions and traditions of other hunters? I do think there is a legitimate question around the rights of private property owners, which would benefit me personally, but by regulating one group of hunters in this way, aren't we cracking open the door for the slow erosion of other hunting traditions? Very well put.
Yep. That's the problem. Like, you know, it doesn't bother you unless it's affecting you directly, right? But then when it affects you directly, it's like, you know, where does that put you? There's no good answer, right? Like,
no. If I came from if I lived on a planet outer space, I was telling my kids the other day that from other planets' perspectives, we're in outer space.
I was going to say you live on a planet.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They have a very like them-centric worldview. And I was trying to be like, you know, we're in outer space. If someone is on another planet.
if aliens came here,
They're
we'd
talking
be the
about
aliens.
us. Yeah. They're talking about us being in outer space. Anyhow, if I lived on a planet in outer space and I was like totally rational, but completely unhip to social mores on Earth. You follow me? And someone said, hey man, you know, as a Martian, do you think that someone should be able to take a big pack of dogs and the person can't go on the neighbor's place, but he can send his dogs over on that neighbor's place to chase the deer back over to his place so he can shoot them? As a Martian, unattuned to, not tuned into mores on planet Earth, I would be like, no, I don't think you should be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's called Mars justice.
Sounds like a show.
Like I'm not into any kind of, you know, as a Martian, I'm not into like any kind of long term, like, you know what I mean? I just take face value arguments, right? I don't know the history.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm not from Mars.
I mean, if you had a pack of dogs screw up your hunt a time or two, it'd be hard to have the attitude like, I'm going to take one for the team here, right?
I'll put that Martian thing another way. Let's say you were setting up a whole new state. Like you got a whole new state and you're in charge of setting up the whole new state and you got to like figure out all the rules. And when this came up and they said, well, what are we going to do about, like, we all agree that you can't go on another guy's land without permission, right? And everybody's like, oh yeah, that's obvious. And they go, what about if he sends his big old pack of dogs over onto the neighbor's place? It brings all them deer back and then he gets them on his place. What should we do in our new state? There's no tradition.
Yeah.
There's no tradition part of it. That's what I'm trying to get at with this Martian stuff. I'm not considering tradition.
Yeah.
I would be like, in this state, this traditionless state, I would say that I don't think you should be able to do that.
Yeah, but we're not talking about a new state. We're talking about a state that has a long tradition of
I know,
This is
but it's
like
just my way of attacking.
this is like your if days were 48 hours long argument, then why it would be okay to wear the same outfit for those 48 hours.
Yeah, like why I wear my clothes 2 days in a row.
Yeah, if we lived in a completely different reality, then this
Things
would be
would
fine.
be different.
Yes.
I mean, this I think raises the question. Like in Montana, we actually did create a new hound hunting opportunity for black bears recently, and at the time it was proposed, I was a little nervous that going out in the spring it would be a different experience. And it wasn't like I didn't. It's not
There'd
like
just be dogs running
It's not like I
everywhere.
don't support hound hunting. You know,
You're
like,
straying all over the place because this is about private property, buddy.
Well, we're talking about tradition and whether we're creating tradition or like creating a new opportunity. And I will say, like, my concerns about that.
You're talking about my new state.
Yeah, that I was following up that question. Like, I mean, there are instances where it's not just a new state, but there are new traditions being proposed.
Understood.
And I will say, like, it didn't change the spring black bear hunt in the way that I thought it might, but
I got an answer for this guy. He just needs to get a pack of dogs.
Here we go.
yeah.
He just
Here's
needs
an
to
answer.
he just needs to get a pack of dogs. Yeah, and problem solved.
Yeah.
But I do think
'Cause
the
if you can't beat them, join them.
That's right.
The private property thing is weird because I killed a lion a couple years ago, and when the dogs were chasing that lion, they picked up another lion, and some of the dogs went down and treed a cat on private property in like a little subdivision.
But in Montana, you're allowed to go legally go get your dogs off of.
We went down and knocked on the door and got the dogs, and the cat presumably.
I'm pretty sure
left
Giannis
the
said
area.
you can go get your
But it was
dogs.
still. I mean, it still feels very uncomfortable, right? I'm kind of like, because I do think like if I were that homeowner and I looked out my window and there's like a couple guys pulling their dogs away from a tree and there's a cat up there, like, yeah, it's a little weird, and I felt funny about it, but I also don't know what you're going to do.
I've totally changed my mind now that I thought about it more. Now, if I was setting up a new state and someone brought this up, you know what I would think to myself?
Everybody has to have dogs.
No, picture this. Just let me picture a scenario here. We're looking at extremes. I'm looking at the extreme of he sends all of his dogs over there. He sends like 30 dogs over there to do like an organized drive.
Yeah.
Right? And like strip this guy's property of deer. That's an extreme
roundup.
view. But picture this. Picture little Tommy Dickinson is hunting rabbits with his beagle on the fence line with old man Morgan. So we got little Tommy Dickinson hunting old man Morgan's fence line. And he's got his little beagle, Patsy. Patsy periodically is under the fence, cross the fence, under the fence, cross the fence. What do? Shoot Tommy Dickinson?
Or his dog.
Shoot Patsy? Is that what you're saying?
Shoot them both?
Of course not. He can't control Patsy's going over on old man Morgan's place.
Yeah.
No one would want to live in a place like this.
What if that rabbit runs under Morgan's deck and the dog followed him under the deck?
And Morgan's on the deck sleeping.
What if the dog goes into Morgan's house and starts eating his cat's food?
Then it gets sticky.
That's why this is a tricky one, because it's a tricky one. You'd almost want to make a rule that says, like, don't push it.
Oh, yeah.
If you're a hound hunter, don't push it.
Control your dogs.
Don't push it.
Yeah.
Or look, you could kind of train up hound hunters to be like, we're doing a deer push here with our hounds. Knock on some doors in advance. Let the landowners know. Maybe they'll come. I don't know. Like, there's ways to like handle this that might make it more palatable to people.
Okay, let me hit you with this one then, since we're playing this game. I talked about this. We had our rough cut episode. We got a rough cut episode we talked about a bunch where me and Seth are rattling bucks down in Texas. Now, we're hunting on a property where they don't do any kind of like food, feeding, licks, mineral licks, nothing. It's got natural water, well, like dirt tanks for cattle, and natural food, and that's it. They don't lift a finger for the deer, for feeding them. The neighboring place is a very managed deer property, Okay. And they got all the feeders and all that kind of stuff. They're putting out they're deworming the deer, all kinds of whatever.
But not high fences, or they do have
No.
Gotcha.
No, but they're taking care of deer. Managing deer. We would make a habit of sitting close to that border, rattling, trying to rattle over the big
Those real healthy ones.
trying to rattle
supplements.
rattle over these high protein megabucks. Could you make the case, well, your sound is coming onto my property, taking my deer?
No, you couldn't. Come on, it's a dog versus some rattling.
It's just, if you're setting up a new state, this is all stuff you got to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I that one is obvious. I don't think there's any wrong there, but yeah, if I was managing my deer herd and the neighbor just always set up on the property line, right?
You might put a fence up.
Yeah, I might put a fence up.
That's a big part of growing up, though, is whatever place you have permission to hunt on or whatever public land you got, you
get to the edge of it.
You know the best hunting is right on the edge.
Yeah.
You could get permission to be some guy's got 300 acres, and you look over at that neighbor's place, and you're like, I'm going to sit right on the edge. It's got to be better over there. And the neighbor's thinking the same thing about your place, so his tree stand is also right on the edge of the property you got permission on. But I can only take this new state Mars stuff so far because there is the tradition thing. I've just really my sympathies go out to the hound hunters who are doing the same thing, but the culture is changing around them.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
They're like holdouts.
If this was Virginia, yeah? Let's say a ballot box movement came up to just outlaw hound hunting, deer hound hunting. Something just happened in Colorado.
I'd fight it tooth and nail.
Okay. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I'd carpet bag it from out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
You know what that's a reference to?
Someone throwing some bags in a carpet or a carpet in a bag.
Reconstruction.
I know.
Oh. Why'd you act like you were dumb?
Because you obviously wanted to explain it.
Well, thank you. You're he's going to explain it no matter what.
Why'd you act like you were dumb? Because I knew you wanted to act like you were smart.
Had to tee it up.
Thanks, man.
No,
Thanks for looking out for
my
me.
reaction to this guy's letter is yeah, it's complicated. He sees it from a lot of different ways, and I do too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'll propose it. I'm going to propose the only constructive thing I have to say on this thing. I would, I'm not a deer hound hunter in Virginia, but I'm a occasional recreational trapper in Montana. I don't always do just what I don't always do what I could.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always do what I could.
Totally.
Because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, you could do that. You could do that. You might get someone real upset.
Mm-hmm.
But you could do it. But I could also do it over there and not have anybody get real upset. And sure, I could do that, but I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to, I don't, when I sense that I'm doing a thing that well, yeah, you could, but I shy away from those moments,
mm-hmm.
And if I was a deer hound hunter in Virginia and I thought there's nothing stopping me from hunting, what was his name? The old man?
Morgan.
Morgan's.
Old man Morgan.
I know old man Morgan has asked me 100 times not to hunt his place on the opening day, but he can't stop me.
Yeah.
Well,
so I'm going to hunt old man Morgan.
I feel like the same way when I'm going to go hunt a spot and there's 2 trucks parked where I wanted to park. My attitude isn't I can do whatever I want.
Yep.
It's kind of like if I were parked here, I wouldn't want someone to pull in behind me.
You know,
I
was going to put decoys on that pond, and no one can stop me.
Mm-hmm.
So move your decoys over.
I was going to sit in that tree, and there's a guy sitting in this tree. I'm going to sit right next to him.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say if you're a deer hound hunter in Virginia, the best way to make sure it sticks around for a while is just show some courtesy and some restraint now and then.
Moving on across the country to Arizona.
No, we're not doing this. We're skipping this, remember?
Well, no, he's just asking a question.
No, this is not.
Oh, we're skipping this?
Yeah, we're skipping this. Should have just,
Moving on across the country to
Reciprocity.
the Dakotas. Yeah, moving to the Dakotas. Kind of across the country. A good cross a chunk of it.
Mm-hmm.
On a recent podcast episode, 617, if you haven't put this together yet, we're talking about old podcast episode discussion points. We touched on a thing that states do called reciprocity. And I had always known reciprocity only under the interesting little management. I'm struggling here. I had known reciprocity only in one context. In fur bearer management, they use reciprocity to even the playing field from one state to the next according to how their policies toward non-residents. That was a terrible sentence, but hear me out. Montana, historically, has not allowed non-residents to buy a fur harvester license. Okay. Mm-hmm. So of the species that are managed as fur-bearing animals, muskrat, mink, otter, beaver, bobcat, okay, they're managed as fur-bearing animals. There was no non-resident opportunity to do that in Montana. They changed it, but there wasn't. So other states would set up a thing called reciprocity, meaning a state would say, we will sell you a non-resident trapping permit if your state would sell one of our residents a non-resident trapping permit. And because of reciprocity, if you lived in Montana, you didn't fur trap out of state in a state that practiced reciprocity. Because they're like, dude, you can't you're preventing our citizens from buying the tags, but then you want to come here and buy one of ours?
They do the same with license prices too in some cases.
Oh, do they?
I think maybe like you come to a state and pay $1,000 for an elk tag.
Okay.
People from that state come to your state to buy a deer tag, and they're going to charge you. I think there are examples.
They'll stick it to them.
Yeah.
Well, the other example that I wasn't even aware of is South Dakota had a reciprocity. Was it North or South Dakota had this?
South Dakota.
The spearfishing one.
Oh,
North Dakota.
North Dakota, yeah.
North Dakota had a reciprocity around spear and pike through the ice.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, you can spear pike through the ice if a North Dakotan can spear pike through the ice on your place. Oh. And I was musing about this reciprocity issue because I was saying, let's say Colorado had passed, it failed, but let's say Proposition 127 had passed in Colorado, and suddenly you cannot hunt lions in Colorado. Would a state ever exercise reciprocity to a Colorado resident? Meaning a Colorado resident wants to come to Montana. And they're like, hey, I want to buy a mountain lion tag. Montana would say, no. Because our residents can't hunt mountain lions in your state. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I was musing about this. Just the issue of reciprocity. And we got some listener feedback from it. A guy writes in, I had the opportunity to tune into the Poppin' Corks podcast. That was the name of an episode, where the topic of reciprocity was discussed from a wildlife management perspective. While I can stack hands, I never heard this expression before. While I can stack hands on the idea of states and their respective agencies dictating reciprocity rules for state-managed species, I find it a hard pill to swallow when it comes to the topic of federally managed species, specifically and selfishly waterfowl. He goes on, why is it that a state such as South Dakota can have a non-resident lottery for a federally managed species? I buy a federal duck stamp, which presumably some of this money goes to habitat and conservation activities in the state of South Dakota, among all others. Why then would I not have the same opportunity as a resident? He goes on, he's not advocating to pay a resident rate, blah, blah, blah. I don't mean to blah, blah, blah out of disrespect, but I mean, that's the basic idea of what he's saying. But he's overlooking something. Oh, he goes, there's one in another point he makes. This became more top of mind to me when the limitation of non-resident hunters was brought up with respect to Stuttgart, Arkansas. He says, indeed, reciprocity is a slippery slope. Alec, you're overlooking something. Ducks they're not just federally managed. They're state and federal.
Yeah.
And international.
And I also think like the reciprocity thing is a little more complicated than just treating residents and non-residents the same. The reciprocity is about one state treating non-residents in their state and another state treating non-residents to that state in the same way. Right? Like,
yeah, it's a state having varied attitudes toward non-residents depending on what state they come from and what the rules of that state are.
Yeah. So here, I'm not clear how the reciprocity, he seems to have more of a complaint with the difference between residents and non-residents.
It got him thinking.
Yeah.
The reciprocity thing got him thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
About this. Yeah. Okay. Just a couple things here before really taking on the question. You're right. There's federal oversight of waterfowl regulations. Waterfowl regulations are jointly managed by the feds and the state. You might say, well, why the hell is that? Well, think about it. They're migratory. Okay. So let's say you had one state that totally shit the bed on waterfowl management, and they kill every duck that comes through their state. Well, that state is then screwing over other states along the flyway. So there's like some federal oversight, meaning these birds aren't stationary. They move internationally in some cases. I mean, there's many birds that they're nesting in northern Alaska. They fly all across Canada. They fly over 6 or 7 states, maybe more on their way down. And they ultimately, some of our teal will winter in the Bahamas. We'll have ducks that winter in Mexico, right? So there's an international bird. So there's international and federal oversight on waterfowl management, but the state still plays a very important role in rule setting and enforcement. And when they look at things like bag limits on ducks, the feds factor in the importance of the state to waterfowl preservation in general, meaning if you're a state that hosts a lot of breeding pairs of birds for a long period of time, you're going to be treated differently than a state that maybe they only pass through for a month out of the year. All fair? Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's not just federal, it's federal and state. That's the thing. That's why you got to have a state waterfowl stamp and a federal waterfowl stamp. So I don't think the feds aren't saying, and I got an idea. They're not going like, the feds aren't going, and let's have it be that in South Dakota, non-residents can't hunt. That's not coming from the feds. That's coming from the state who has management authority.
Yeah.
Huh?
What exactly, like, what kind of lot? Are we talking about lottery for drawing?
They capped, South Dakota's capped. You got to draw to hunt ducks in South Dakota. I drew it a couple years ago. We went and hunted ducks in South Dakota, and we like drew the permit.
Is it a statewide deal or specific areas, or?
I feel like it's statewide, but I could be wrong. I can't remember.
It looks,
and then they have different dates too.
And it's just
they have a resident opener, a non-resident opener. Yeah. His whole gripe is he's saying, how could you have a thing where there's federal oversight, but you have states making up their own rules? And it's like, I guess the simplest answer is it's not just federal oversight.
Yeah, the state, South Dakota's Fish and Game Agency is also managing those ducks and geese.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that.
In addition to.
Here's another guy on Reciprocity. He says, he points out what he's eating. As he writes this, he's eating eggs, chicken, and pomegranate seeds.
That is an interesting combination.
He says, let's say you invite me to your home. Okay, he says, let's say you invite me to your home and you let me know there's a no shoes in the house policy for the purpose of keeping your carpet clean.
Like every Asian household.
I obviously, it's like, man, my wife's trying to pull that on me right now.
Oh,
She's trying to, after all these years. She claims that it's always been that way. I just haven't listened.
no, it's just so much better. You just leave your shoes. You just leave your outside shoes.
Hard
Yeah,
disagree.
at
but
the
you're
door.
Asian.
Yeah, yes.
It's like, no shit, it's obvious to you.
But
Especially when you're like going in and out of the house doing shit, you got to take them off, put them on.
just-
That's my whole thing.
Yeah.
Then
They're all
like-
dirty.
No, but leave
I gotta
them-
get my hands all dirty.
I
No,
just
but
have-
leave
I
them
have
untied.
indoor
leave them
Crocs
untied
and
until you
outdoor
know
Crocs.
you are exiting. See, there you go. He's
I
not
have a
Asian
pair
and
of-
he's got a thing.
I have these
He
wool
knows.
overshoes that you slip your feet into to then run through the house.
Yeah, or you could do that. But no, just
It's
don't.
like a giant flip flop. No, it's like a giant slide in.
You got to get your kids to buy into it too if you got kids, and that's difficult,
That's
man.
the other thing. It's like the dog don't take its
just
feet
early
off.
training. Well, some people whitewash their dog's feet before they go inside. the
That's
house.
just too
No,
much
we
work.
I
just
will-
mop.
I will.
I
wipe
might
my
switch.
dog's
I
feet
might
off,
switch
yeah.
because my wife, it drives my wife bananas.
You think he's eating a fried egg or scrambled eggs with his chicken and pomegranates?
You think the pomegranate's raw
gotta be
or
fried.
like
Fried egg and chicken. That's a little bit like
that's like the new
that
steak and
fried
eggs.
chicken?
Pomegranate
fried egg and chicken. It's like that Old Testament prohibition against eating meat and milk together. Like you can't eat.
Oh, like
you wouldn't
going
boil a
kosher?
calf in its mother's milk.
Like separating the.
Yeah, it's like a chicken and the egg. It's like, jeez, what came first?
Reminds me when I was
Am I right?
Give him a break.
Reminds me when I was in Hawaii eating scrambled eggs and there was a chicken pecking at my feet. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, he's like, it's my babies.
Circle of life.
Let's get back to the shoe
Yeah.
rule.
I love that rabbit hole.
Okay, so I tell him, hey man, this guy here, he writes in. I tell him, I said, hey man, don't wear your shoes in my house. I want to keep my carpet clean. He says, I obviously respect that rule and leave my stinkers. It's a euphemism for shoes, I gather. Leave my stinkers at the door outside.
Unless he's got really smelly feet, then you'd want him to keep his shoes on.
Here's where it gets rich.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Here's
I
where it
want
gets
toe
rich.
cheese on the inside. Of
He goes on to say, 1 week later, I invite you to my home. I do not have such a shoe rule. In fact, I have no carpet in the house. But since I had to take my shoes off at your house, I then tell you to leave your shoes at the door as I walk around in my own shoes.
Sounds deranged.
He's equating all of this to
No,
reciprocity.
yep.
But that
I got lost.
my
No,
I think
he's
No,
kind of
I-
on track.
No,
Yeah,
but
he
the
is.
but he says that's petty and irrational. I think the better metaphor is you come into my house and I crack open a beer and I tell you I don't let people who don't live in this house eat or drink in my house. And then I go over to your house and I want to eat your food. Right? Like there's not a this is silly because it doesn't affect anybody, but the reality is like if you told somebody that they can't have any of like a beer in the fridge and then you went over to their house and grabbed a beer out of their fridge, that would be weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to open a business where I would help people rationalize irrational decisions.
You got to come
That
up with a
should-
good name for that
We've
one.
got a podcast to do that on. That can be a new segment.
Well, because it'd be like, let's say a guy wants to buy a new truck, but it just makes 0 sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
He'd call, and I'd be like, hey, man, you work hard, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like your full self in that old truck? Like, don't you feel that you're going to show up better at work and show up better
Everything.
for your family when you feel more confident?
Everything
So
would be
what you're going to
different.
be is an enabler and a pusher.
And then he'll hang up and be like, God, I am going to buy that truck.
Putting American families in debt since 2024.
And then
Yeah,
you get
we
a little
should-
commission from Ford or whatever.
We should bring Susie Ormond back on the show for
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Listeners decide if they want that.
Yeah. So it's like, you help. And this is his thing. This guy could start a little project where he takes complex law issues and brings them home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, complex law issues, and he brings them into like household analogies.
Yeah.
But if you like Steve's idea, then write into the MeatEater podcast at themeateater.com with your dilemmas.
Yeah, something you need to justify, but you just can't. Or I'll help you if you're trying to like get something out of your wife or get a concession out of your wife, but you can't think of how to approach it. I'll walk you through it.
What do they put in the subject line?
I need help.
Okay. That's perfect. I need help.
I don't know. We occasionally get emails every now and then from people who really do need help. So we might just there might be a boy cried wolf situation there.
On the same subject. Sort of the same subject. It really, like, the reciprocity thing really got folks.
Yeah, a lot of people wrote in.
Okay, so here's this one. Not the same thing as reciprocity, but a something that seems unfair. Okay. Dear MeatEater crew, I know the subject of paying higher prices if you are a non-resident has been covered on the podcast, but I'm in a situation that I don't think has been covered and would like to get everyone's thoughts. I'll try to make a long story short. I grew up in the northern lower peninsula of Michigan, where my family owns hunting land with a camp. After I graduated high school, I joined the military, did 20 years. Here he's stacking the deck.
He is. He's setting himself up as
He's stacking the deck.
He's trying to like gain points in his favor.
Yep.
But
it has nothing, like, with all due respect it.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
But this is bullshit.
It should have no
what if
impact
you're like
on his art.
He may
He's
have
stacking
taken
the deck.
He may have taken the class that your kids.
Right, but
Oh,
nothing
shit.
he's
Yeah.
saying.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's true. This is the kind of thing I would help someone with.
It would be like if Steve murdered someone and they were like, but he was a really good guy.
What about if he'd written in, if I graduated high school and I never quite really figured out what I wanted to do, kind of bounced around for a while.
Got in trouble with the law. And now I'd like to buy a resident hunting license. So he's stacking the deck, but I'll let him do it. I'll let him do it. After I graduated high school, I joined the military, did 20 years. Thank you for your service. He's stacking the deck.
Well, I think it conflates
And now-
it. Yeah.
So put that out of your head. And weighing the fairness of this, he
Start here.
tainted the jury, they call it. He tainted the jury.
You would start here.
Yep. And now we're back to the fact of the matter, with all due respect. And now I am a permanent resident of Wisconsin, which is where my wife is from. That's a good detail. That's not stacking the deck. He goes on. I do bow hunt in Wisconsin. He doesn't mention this. As a resident, under resident pricing. He doesn't mention that. I do bow hunt in Wisconsin, but I still go to Michigan every year for the firearm deer season to hunt at our camp. And of course, now I have to pay for a non-resident license. Last year, my dad took his name off the deed and added mine to it. I am now part owner, along with a couple other family members, which means I'm paying my part of the property taxes, utilities, and everything else that goes along with owning a hunting camp. It seems to me that this is a little on the unfair side because of all the other monies I am paying to the state of Michigan by owning land, that I still have to pay full price for a non-resident hunting license. He proposes a third category. He feels that there should be a third category called the non-resident landowner.
To be fair,
No.
Just
no.
wait.
This can go so many ways.
Montana has that coming home to hunt thing, which is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, love
Yeah,
that.
coming home to hunt.
But anyway, what he's saying is he deserves a discount, right?
He says, hey, I'm paying property taxes in Michigan. I deserve a discount. But here's the thing. From a state fish and game agency's perspective, you can only be a resident of one state.
Yeah,
That's right.
Does he vote twice?
I don't understand why this is so like fuzzy. You know, like if you get busted for poaching, your name goes into a database and then you lose hunting and fishing privileges
Right.
in
I
all
don't
these
think
other
it's-
compact states.
In 44 states.
Why don't we just have a database where you are a resident of this state and it just cross-references it? Because you hear all the time about people buying 3 or 4.
Oh, sure.
I
resident
see people getting in
licenses.
trouble for it.
Like,
When I was running the fly shop, like we were a licensed vendor back in Colorado, and there's a lot of second homeowners in the valley we lived in. And this shit came up all the time for fishing licenses, elk tags. They'd bring in bills. They'd show you they'd show you all sorts of shit to like be like, look. And I'm like, dude,
What is your driver's
you're not a
license say?
resident.
Mhm.
Like, there's nothing I can do about it.
He goes on to bring up another gripe. I'm not hacking on the guy. These are great
No.
questions. He brings up another gripe. There's a lot of elk in that area, but it's a draw. But the elk draw isn't, and he's got elk to come onto his family's property, but he's not eligible for the elk draw because he's not a resident. I would look at it like this. His name's Scott. Scott, I would think about it a little bit like this. Would you write us saying, hey, man, I vote in Wisconsin, but I own a place in Michigan, so I'd like to vote there too? Or would you write into us and say, hey, I'm applying for unemployment privileges in Wisconsin, but I have a place in Michigan. I want to apply for unemployment benefits in Michigan too.
I mean,
Of course not.
it wouldn't surprise me if there were a state out there that had a non-resident landowner category pricing difference.
No, because there's going to be a lot of money that's put into lobbying for that rule.
Yep. And
And you could picture how that rule
and
would
it's
come
just
to
like
be.
non-resident landowner preferences in the draw, which has been a thing.
Oh, this guy should know about this. Scott, you're gonna dig this one. If your situation was going on in other states, there'd probably be a thing where you were eligible. There might be a thing where you guys were eligible for landowner tags that wouldn't matter where you were a resident. This is all happening to you in the wrong state.
Yep.
But I'd look at it this way. You got a great hunting camp in Michigan. You're a resident of Wisconsin, so you can hunt there. Tags are a little more expensive, but it sounds pretty good.
Yep.
How much are tags there? Like, how much
Not
are we
bad.
talking about?
A couple $100. I think.
Not Western price, non-resident
Yeah. Okay.
prices.
So it's not like he'd be saving like thousands of dollars.
And I'll bet you can shoot a whole pile of deer on that Michigan license if you wanted to.
Unless
Sorry,
he just,
Scott.
transfers his residence to Michigan and becomes an out-of-stater in Wisconsin.
Non-resident looks like $190 versus
That's a smoking deal.
$40.
What I feel Scott
come
should,
on.
if he was gonna rate out what chaps his ass more, I feel like he should have greater ass chap over the elk thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would chap my ass more than the 190, because he's hunting at home for $20
Yeah.
Mhm.
in Wisconsin.
Yeah, the elk thing's tough.
Oh, you know what? Here's the deal too. My mom still lives in the house I was brought up in.
Mm-hmm.
I could say to my mom, I could be like, hey, Mom, we need to get my name. I want to get my name on the deed to the house
Yeah.
so that I can start hunting there as a resident.
Yep. I mean, that's the
That's a low
Right.
blow.
that's
move.
I feel like
not
that's
low
why
blow.
residency has to be very particular. You know, like because there's all kinds of ways guys could fuzz it up.
Yeah, you know what I would do? I would go around to every state, and I'd be like,
I'll
I'd
put
call
my-
a realtor. I'd be like,
Yeah.
I want to buy the dumbest, shittiest little lot you can find.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even need to be big enough for me to stand on.
Yeah.
Like, if you can find any weird little thing I can buy, that way I can be a resident
In a
there.
county with the lowest taxes.
That way I can hunt as a resident there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Scott. You should be ashamed of yourself, Scott. From Green Bay.
I don't know.
Thanks for being a listener, Scott.
Sorry, buddy.
I love you to death, Scott, but I just... Oh, he even... You know what I failed to say? He says, "Am I just whining over nothing?"
I think
He's not whining over nothing.
We could have
but-
shortened that whole thing up and said,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, he's not saying I want to get a resident tag. To be fair, he's not saying I should be able to get a resident tag.
Fees.
He's just saying somewhere in the middle, like
cut him a break.
Yo,
somewhere
cut
in the
the guy
middle.
a break.
Yeah,
20 years in the military. Cut me a break.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let him apply for an elk tag.
So he ends his thing, in all fairness to Scott. He ends his thing. So do I have a legitimate complaint about paying non-resident fees?
No.
Or am I just whining over nothing? Thanks for
Yes.
your thoughts on this. You know what he should go hunt Doug's place.
With dogs.
yeah, with dogs,
He should get a big pack of dogs and go down and run them through Doug's property.
and wear his
See what
shoes.
comes
Wear
out.
his shoes in Doug's house.
Doug wouldn't care.
Dude, at Doug's house, you got to put your shoes on to go inside.
Yeah, you do. The floor will make
You're
your
looking
feet
there, you're like,
dirty.
yeah, I think I'll put my shoes on.
Put on my rubber boots.
I don't mean Doug's house. That's mean. Doug's
that's the barn.
the farm.
Hunting camp.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
farm.
yeah.
Their camp. But now and then he cleans up, and he kind of he used to have this thing where those little ladybugs that aren't ladybugs.
Are there those like white ones with
No,
black
no,
spots?
it looks just like a ladybug, but it's a Asian.
Japanese beetle. You're not talking
Yeah.
about Japanese beetles.
Yeah.
We had a lot of those around
Oh
Pennsylvania.
my God, they'd carpet the place.
They'll eat the
Oh,
shit out of your
those
stuff.
don't
You know,
really
like
affect
you know those little pull cords in the
thanks.
upstairs. They got like a 4-foot ceiling.
Yeah.
where we sleep up there, and he's got pull cords. You turn the light on and off. It'll be that those little Japanese beetles will be covering the pull
Mexican
cord.
bean beetle? I don't think it's the
No, they're
Japanese
like a
beetle.
shiny copper color.
Oh,
No,
then
no,
that is a
no. It
Japanese
looks like a
beetle. Okay.
ladybug.
Well,
but
then
it's
we're
not.
not talking about the same thing.
Son of a gun.
Um,
I was just trying to wrap the show up. Hold on. Type in like
6 people with computers. Let's see how long this takes.
Looks like a ladybug, but not.
it is a
try Mexican
Dude looks like a
bean
lady
beetle.
by
Let me-
Aerosmith.
Mexican,
Asian lady beetles.
Mexican bean beetle. Look at that.
Asian lady beetles. So
Mexican Asian.
so
Same
many
thing.
of those were in his place that those pull cords you go turn the lights on and off. It would be you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not. So many of them on that string that the ones on the bottom are like falling away. And there's more coming across the ceiling and getting on the rope, and like the lower guys are like, I can barely hang on. I mean, you wake up, they're in your hair. So yeah, when that was going on, you'd have to put you'd want to put shoes on to go in. But he had a infestation exterminator type dude come out and put some stuff in the walls to try to get a grip on it. It was bad.
So
And
now
I'm not even going to talk about the flies.
Oh, this is interesting about the Asian lady beetle.
Doug, I love that place, man. It's my favorite place in the world.
Doesn't
All right,
sound-
thanks for joining, everybody. Tune in next time.
Bottom of the dock of a lake, enough for supper is all I take. The oversized rod so long and thick, but I don't overcompensate my ugly stick. On the ground or tree, bluegill or pumpkin seed. All I need from this world is panfish and squirrel. The designer dogs with too much fur. My new best friend's a mountain girl. American made, fox and grays, stare in the eye of the black face. ground or treed, bluegill or pumpkin seed. All I need, all I need. In your home of leaves and weeds, I'll fulfill this ancient deed. As I dream in this world. Panfish and squirrel. Panfish and squirrel.